All right. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. My name's Hallie Frazee. I'm the Wildfire Communications Manager for Pacific Power, and I'll be starting us off this evening. Huge thanks to our local folks who are here from Pacific Power. We've got our veg management person, we've got Heather. Thank you. I've got our area manager, Jeremy, also Joey. I got you, Bill. Our regional business manager, Carrie, is here as well. We've got our emergency manager for this region, Amber. Howdy. We've also got our VP, Tom. Where'd you go? There you are. Great. And we've got our other ops manager, Kevin. Beautiful. Looks like we've got several of our local fire folk here, so appreciate you guys coming out. Before we get started, I am going to have Commissioner Les Perkins from the Oregon Public Utility Commission is just going to start us off, just some brief remarks. Okay. I'm going to give it that.
Hey, good evening. So Les Perkins, Oregon Public Utility Commissioner, one of three appointed by the governor in the state. So for those of you who don't know, the Oregon Public Utility Commission is a state agency, and to put it simply, our role is to hold the utilities accountable through various forms of proceedings like setting rates and regulating safety. So these are public proceedings that rely on input from folks like you. So welcome you to come to some of our proceedings. They're super interesting for nerdy energy people. Our mission is to ensure Oregonians have access to safe, reliable, and fairly priced utility service. On wildfire specifically, our role is focused on reviewing the utilities' wildfire mitigation plans annually, auditing their infrastructure and veg management annually, and reviewing their spending before they can charge ratepayers for the work that they've done. So our rules require that they engage with you, customers and communities that are served by their infrastructure on their wildfire plans. So I'm here tonight just to sit and listen and observe, and so thank you all for coming out tonight and being engaged.
All right, and I totally forgot, we have one of our new fire emergency response managers, Mike. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. There you go. There it is. Who is one of our newest team members who will be, during wildfire season, will be out in our communities should we have any active wildfires. So maybe. Just gonna. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulties there. So this evening, we're out here to talk to you guys about our wildfire mitigation plan, also what we're doing in the community for wildfire prevention, how we're strengthening our system. And to do that, we've brought out some of our various experts to talk to you. First off, we have our senior meteorologist, Chester Lampkin. He'll be talking to you about some of the situational awareness we do. We also have our wildfire mitigation program manager, Melissa Swenson. She'll get into a little bit more about how we operate the system and what we do for system strengthening. And we have our emergency manager, Nora. Just wave. Okay. Sorry. Also here this evening to talk about what you can do to be prepared and what we're doing to be prepared for wildfire season. So like I said, we'll kind of hit on those major areas. But before we get started, we're going to have just kind of a quick little video that highlights what Pacific Power is doing and how we're investing back in our communities.
We are living in a world where there is more extreme weather, and wildfire risk continues to escalate. Here at PacifiCorp, we are making the investments necessary to protect the public and to protect the infrastructure and to protect the people of this company as well.
While the wildfire risk has been increasing here in the West, the investments that PacifiCorp has made has risen right along with it. To date, we've already spent over $500 million in wildfire mitigation, and the current forecast for deploying the system hardening that's involved in the wildfire mitigation plan reaches into the billions over the next 8-10 years. It becomes important to understand, well, where do we prioritize those investments? And so we want to make sure we're targeting that large investment where it's going to make the most impact, where it's going to reduce that fire risk the most.
We have an expansive weather station network here at Pacific Core. By the end of 2023, in Pacific Power, we had nearly 300 weather stations, and in Rocky Mountain Power, we had nearly 200 weather stations. They're there because we're collecting important meteorological data that we're going to feed into our local weather forecast models. Temperature, wind, moisture levels, wind gusts. These hundreds of weather stations give us better data so that we can make better decisions on how to mitigate fire risk and how to protect the system from extreme weather events.
So by establishing an internal meteorology team, they're able to run these risk models with our own weather station network to help identify that risk no matter where and no matter when across our entire service territory throughout the year.
We have amazing, really cutting-edge technology. We have a computer model that covers more than 1 million square miles. It forecasts weather for every single point across that entire region. We have access to 2 types of modeling. We have the short-term modeling and the long-term modeling.
With both that long-term and short-term view, we're able to identify where the fire risk is, and by identifying that, we can then decide what mitigations to deploy.
We've taken 30 years of historical data, and we use that to identify areas of potential risk so that we can mitigate as much as we can ahead of potential wildfires in the future.
By looking back at that data, we understand that when the conditions are at their driest and when the wind is at its windiest, that top 5%, when those 2 things come together, that's where 98% of the catastrophic fires have occurred. When those conditions are present, we want to, for safety reasons, de-energize the lines and let those conditions pass. And so we deploy that when we know that the conditions are escalating, but they're nowhere near that top 5%. And so we give ourselves a little bit of a safety buffer, say a 15% dryness, 15% windiness, to make sure that we're making a good balanced decision between the risk and the outages that are created through the mitigation steps of de-energizing.
I'm optimistic because I know that we are doing the work necessary to keep the public safe and to protect the infrastructure of the utility.
As that risk has increased, our response has increased as well to match it and do everything possible to reduce that risk of fire in the areas we serve.
Okay, so that was kind of a high-level overview of what we do for wildfire, and as I'm sure you're all aware, the risk of wildfire is growing. And so the activities that we do as a power company to prepare for that, to respond to that, to guard against that is also increasing. So just to kind of give you a high-level overview, as I mentioned, I have our experts here who are going to go into these in a little bit more depth, but this is just to kind of give you a larger scale picture of what we're doing. We kind of base our activities in these different buckets that we have. Our first one is situational awareness. This is the weather forecasting, the risk modeling. This is coordinating with our various public safety partners. This is our long-term risk modeling to look at fire potential. This is our 5-day short-term risk modeling for emerging conditions. We have a lot of different folks and teams and technology that go under that. Our next bucket is operational practices. This is really how we operate the system safely and how we operate the system possibly differently when we're in extreme fire conditions or possibly active wildfires. And this may be how we set settings for various circuits. It could be, how we do work. Melissa's going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Our system strengthening and resilience. This is how we are making the entire system more resilient to wildfire, and not just more resilient to wildfire, but to extreme weather across the board. So whether that's winter weather, severe storms, the work we do, putting that into our system kind of benefits us across. But underlying all of that is our engagement, which is why we're here tonight. We're really happy to be here in this community. We're happy to see that we've got our local residents and customers here, And this is a chance for you to ask your questions of us and for us to hopefully get you the answers you need. But also, we hope you learn some stuff tonight about general wildfire prevention, but also what we're doing and how you can be involved. And so this is what our map looks like for Moro. You can see on the larger state map, there are some little purple areas, mainly down in southern Oregon or up near Hood River. Those are what we call our fire high consequence areas. So those are the areas that are at the highest risk for wildfire. When we look right here at the map of Moro, you see blue, not purple. So that doesn't, that means you're not in a fire high consequence area, which is good. However, that doesn't mean the risk is ever zero or gone. There's always going to be some amount of risk for fire. And so we take that very seriously. And when we assess kind of what activities we're going to do, we're looking at every single service area to determine what's the best fit and what the need is there. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Chester, who's going to kind of dive into our situational awareness.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm a bit loud, so let me know if it's too loud. That's good. You're like, yes, let's be loud. Hopefully you guys are having a great day. It's a beautiful one out here in Sherman County. Just stunning day. We had one of these events just a few counties over just yesterday. It was just fantastic weather, just great questions, some great people. So, I just want to say we really do appreciate you guys coming out. And thank you, Hallie, for the introduction as well. So I'm going to talk about situational awareness. My name is Chester Lampkin. I'm a senior meteorologist here at Pacific Power. I come with 20 years of meteorology experience. Most of my experience in meteorology was actually in media. TV weather folks, we don't just rip and read. Most of us don't. We actually do make our own forecasts. So I have a vast forecasting experience, but this is the first time I've worked this far west. I've worked in Colorado, West Texas for a number of years as well, but really just loving living here in Oregon. It's such a stunning place with great people. And I moved my whole family out here, so so far they're pretty happy with the decision. So I've been with Pacific Power specifically now for about 2 years. And this will be my third fire season here in Oregon. And I want to bring that to attention because, last year was a record setter. We saw the most acres burned on record here in Oregon. We saw a lot of fire, and we're seeing that risk of wildfire just grow all across Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, certainly here in the Western United States, where we have a long history of fire. Fire's been around since way before we were on the land. But there is a lot of evidence that points to wildfire continuing to be a growing risk. And there's a myriad of reasons for that, and we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But I do want to, again, reiterate, we appreciate you guys showing up, coming out here, spending some of your valuable time with us to hear us talk about what we're doing to lower the risk of catastrophic wildfire in the community and along our electrical network. In fact, that's my number one job. A lot of what we do that mitigating the risk, the lowering of risk, starts with some of the stuff we're doing in meteorology. And we've made some big time investments in our program. And we take our job very seriously. Fire season is something we are prepared for every day of the year. We prep for it as soon as the previous fire season ends. Come October, we're like, God bless the rains, but let's start getting ready for the next fire season. We take it seriously. And it starts with situational awareness. Literally knowing what is happening on the landscape as far as fuels conditions, both live and dead fuels. Live fuels being the trees, the grass that we have across the area, and the dead fuels being what is left over from previous seasons or previous growth, if you will. We don't have a lot of forests in this particular part of Oregon. It's mostly grasslands and therefore mostly grass fires, and those are fast-moving fires. And knowing what is still on the landscape, that carryover fuel, as we call it, that dead fuel from previous grass growth, that's very important for us to know what is happening with that and when that is cured and dry enough where we're concerned about those fast-moving fires. So we take different actions to reduce the risk of wildfire along our network. And so, again, I want to reiterate how important situational awareness is, just knowing what has happened, the most recent rains, the most recent growth in the area, knowing what kind of winter you had, how is the precipitation even the previous summer, fall, spring, knowing how that impacts today, being aware of the current situation, the weather conditions, the fire weather conditions. We use that to know what's coming soon in the short term. So what we do in meteorology is we are looking at fire risk on a shorter time scale, generally over the next 5 days for our weather forecast, but on the order of a couple weeks. And sometimes we'll look out a couple months, but like a weather forecast, climate forecast, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? We're a lot better with telling you what's going to happen today than we're going to tell you what's going to happen a month from now. But it's all important information. Now, as far as how to mitigate or lower that risk in the long term, that's stuff that Melissa's going to talk about shortly. So let's start with the forecast process. There are 5 meteorologists currently at PacifiCorp. We're hoping to up that number in the next few months, up to 7. We cover 6 states. It's a large area. It's Oregon, it's Washington, it's California for Pacific Power. And then our sister company, Rocky Mountain Power, we have meteorologists that work there, and they're covering Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho. However, even though we are watching our individual areas, our individual states, we help each other out. Fire season has already begun for our folks that we serve over in parts of Wyoming and Utah. So we as meteorologists here are also watching that part of our territory. And the same, the people in Rocky Mountain Power are backing us up because we have someone who's available as an on-call all the time, right? So there's only 2 of us stationed in Portland right now, covering this part of the territory. Therefore, we got to get breaks sometimes too. We're humans. And so the on-call goes back and forth. But basically the way it works is we are always watching. There's always a meteorologist aware of the situation, aware of what the weather forecast is for our territory, including right here in Sherman County. We do a daily risk forecast, which in the winter is mostly covering wind, ice storms, snowstorms, etc. That's the stuff that takes out our power lines, of course. But the rest of the year, we are in fire mode. We are prepping for fire season in the winter. We are getting into fire season in the spring, generally in the late spring here on the West Coast. And we are in fire season until those first good rains come in October. So it's a long season, and we are working with advanced modeling, whether that be what you see there. That's our WRF, our in-house model, that top right image there. WRF stands for Weather Research Forecast Model. It's a model that is specifically tailored to the Western United States, specifically tailored to our region. And we have access to it within Pacific Power. We own the model. We run the model. We run it because we want to keep the community safe. We run it because we need to be informed of what the fire weather is going to be before it happens. And that's why we have that model. We also use several vendors, including one vendor that provides our wildfire analyst software. It's advanced modeling from a company that's been around for decades. It's been doing fire modeling, and they do fire modeling all across the United States. They do it in Europe. They do it in Australia. They do it in Canada. They do it in places where there is fire. And they've been perfecting that, and it's getting better every year. They put in advanced fuel models. They put in advanced features that allow us to learn how fire behaves. They use artificial intelligence to improve the modeling. They have incredibly smart people doing research, and we tap into that. And they, as their base data, they use our own computer model, our in-house model. So we've got this fancy weather model. They plug it into that wildfire analyst, and we use that to help predict where the biggest risk is for catastrophic fire every single day, 365 days a year along our service territory. Again, we're a team of 5. We make weather forecasts that go 5 days out, but we always like to peek beyond that for professional reasons, but for personal reasons too. I've got kids. I want to know if I could take them outside, whether we're we're going to have good weather for the kids' soccer game, et cetera. So we're always looking at the weather, kind of nerding out over it. And we're focused, when it comes to the professional part, we're focused on the transmission and distribution lines. So the distribution is the power lines that connect right to your homes, right? The ones that run right along on the roads. Here you can see our power poles that go up and down 97. We have infrastructure that goes all the way down to Grass Valley and all the way up to, right up to the freeway up there. And we service this entire region. So we have weather data tied to weather stations, because we have our own weather stations, which is tied to every single circuit in our territory, meaning every single power line that connects to all of your homes, all of the businesses in this area, which means we have a weather forecast that is generated by our computer model and used by the meteorologists to make those forecasts. So we're always watching the weather wherever you live. And a lot of times where you work and where you play. All right, let's move on to that weather station network. Speaking of, you may see some of our weather stations on our poles. We don't have a ton right here in Sherman County. I think the closest one is up to the north there in the Rufus area, but we have a weather station. I believe it's not far from the freeway, but if you're ever up in Rufus, you kind of look at our power poles, you may spot that weather station up there. And we are adding to the network every single year. We have I'm hoping that we have more than eventually the 12 plan. But right now we do have 12 new weather stations going up in the state of Oregon, but there are plans to expand the network. And you can see there's a dot not far from here there in Sherman County. So the idea is that we are trying to get the data to be even more granular. I'm just saying that, sort of like previewing that even though our plan is right now 12, expect that number to start going up over the next several years. That number is going to continue to grow. We're investing. That's what we're doing. So we've got this weather station network. It belongs to us, but it is publicly available. I'll talk more about how you can see that shortly. And again, the weather data is tied to all of our weather stations, which means it is tied to every single circuit across the territory that we serve. How do you view that data? You could view that data on the National Weather Service website. Some of your smart weather apps on your phone and some of the stuff you may see online may actually already be using the weather data from our stations. It's publicly available. We make it publicly available because this is stuff that really should belong to the community, right? So for example, you go to our website. We have our own weather website, pacificpowerweather.com. You can see the weather stations in our area. There's a plot right there. You can see a couple of these stations are DOT stations. Some of them are Forest Service stations, other types of public entities, and then there are a couple of our weather stations in this area as well. They're plotted there on the map. If you go to pacificpowerweather.com, you can find the weather station. You can click on the one nearest to you. It'll give you sort of a computer-generated forecast. That's the same data that we're looking at as meteorologists. So you can kind of see how it's all made, how it's all put together. You get all the things, temperature, humidity, wind, et cetera. But we also use that to plot those fire weather variables. Again, those fuel moistures, a thing called energy release component, which gives you an idea of how much energy would be released if there were a theoretical fire in a certain square footage. We're using that information to determine how risky it is along our territory. It's advanced modeling, that stuff that, you know, before I became a Pacific Power employee 2 years ago, I had no idea how any of this worked. I was clueless. I was just like you all. Like, I just really didn't know. I was just a customer. And like, I am floored by what has gone into the advanced modeling, the advanced technology, and the amount of investment that this company has made. I'm floored by what has been done. We're one of the first utilities across the western United States to do this. Really, one of the first utilities across the entire country to do this, to invest in an in-house meteorology department. And now we're expanding our team of emergency management as well. And again, that's something that we'll talk more about with Melissa and Nora coming up here in just a few minutes. We're working hard every single day, and we're preparing for fire season all the time. So the weather station network, kind of circling back before I get off track, it updates data every 10 minutes, and we can actually switch some of those weather stations to 30-second weather data, where we're getting data every 30 seconds in case there's extreme weather on the system. We also are tied into other networks. We don't operate in silo. We don't work just within ourselves. We work with our partners, the National Weather Service, NOAA, other utilities in the area, PGE, BPA, the PUDs, anybody who's willing to work on this problem, solving the community problem of wildfire, we are working with them. Two of our meteorologists and our data scientists is right now at a meeting, right now, at this very moment in Arizona, working with other utilities discussing this community problem. It's not a problem just in Oregon, California, Arizona. It's a problem in Virginia. It's a problem in Florida. It is a problem all across these United States. And we're continually learning how to do this better. Like I said, we work with NOAA, our National Weather Service. I'm in contact with the NWS up in Pendleton that covers this area. Sometimes every single day of the summer season. We are in contact with folks who work with NIFC, the National Agency Fire Center, and the area, what we call the Geographical Area Coordination Centers. They're based in Portland, but they do fire weather for all of this part of the country, Washington, Oregon. And we're in contact with them on daily calls during the fire season. All right. So that's sort of that first element of situational awareness, knowing what's happening now, where we come from with recent rains, climate, et cetera, using advanced modeling. There's a domain, by the way, of our computer model. See how it stretches all the way out east? It goes all the way out to Colorado, south to almost to the Mexico border and almost to the Canadian border. But I want to talk about that second element of situational awareness, how we're using this stuff, like this advanced modeling. So we've got our WRF model, our weather research forecast model. We just expanded it just literally weeks ago. It now goes out 5 days into the future. We run it twice a day, and we use these data, again, on our daily weather forecast so we can determine the risk, the fire risk of, or the risk of catastrophic fire along our network. We also use that historical data that we talked about in the video. There's a 30-year analysis. We actually tack on data every single year. So we're getting new analysis data every single year. We went backwards because you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from, right? So we've used this weather model data, our own in-house model. I think it took on the order of months to actually run this data. We ran it across a 30-year period in the past and analyzed the days in which we had the worst fire conditions, those hot, dry, windy days. And we use that as our baseline so we can say, hey, this is the kind of day where we had a really hot, dry, windy day, you know, whether it be July 7th, 1998 or something like that. We have similar conditions today. We know that we need to operate the system in a different manner. We need to recommend to operations. They're the professionals, right? We can make our recommendation. They're the professionals. They know how to operate the system safely. We say, hey, this is the condition we're seeing. Operations will say, okay, good to know, thank you. They send out the linemen to do what they need to prepare the system. They tell veg management, say, hey, we need veg management in this situation. We need them here, we need there. We're seeing something coming along. We alert emergency management when we see those extreme conditions coming. And again, this is something we'll talk more about with Melissa and Nora coming up. So we're able to identify those very risky days, the days that wildfires can ignite and spread quickly. And you guys know how quick those fires can spread out here. Go back to July 2018. There was a big fire that started in the Dalles, blew east towards this area. It got as far as Grass Valley, right along 97 here. That was a fast-moving fire, and that is what we are working to mitigate, to lower the risk of that sort of thing happening. We don't want to be involved in that. Nobody does. Okay. I'm just going to review this because I was always told you should always repeat what you're saying, right? So the bottom line here is with the advanced modeling and the short-term weather risk is we've gone backwards. We've looked backwards at where we came from. We hired experienced people who know fire weather. We're learning every single day. We're learning 365. And we're using this data to inform how we make our forecast going forward so we can predict when we're going to have extreme risk on the power lines, the risk of power outages, wildfire ignition, and we study every single day how fire behavior spreads. And we're trying to get better every single day. That is our goal. It's not just about me and the meteorology team. It's the emergency managers, it's the operations, every single person who works on this problem at Pacific Power. So the last thing I want to show you is some of the stuff we've been working on. This is a wildfire demo of that wildfire risk software. Then I'm going to show you pacificpowerweather.com, and then we'll move on. I'll stop talking. so you won't get too bored of me. This is a simulated fire, okay? So this is not a fire that actually existed. This is a fire that, in theory, on July 7th of last summer, we had a record-breaking fire season in Oregon. This is how fire would have behaved based on the weather conditions and our advanced fire fuel model. I've drawn here, I ran this sim myself. I've drawn here on the map, you can see how the fire would behave. Not a very windy day, by the way, but just enough of a wind, a westerly to northwesterly wind here, that potentially a grass fire would spread in this manner in the Moro area. This would be north of town. This is where this simulation is taking place. Again, not a real situation. This did not happen. But our wildfire analyst, it does this every single day. It actually runs these types of models in the background before we even wake up to turn our computer on for the day. And it assigns sort of a risk score and tells us, hey, these are the areas that we're watching. This circuit, these circuits, this area, this is the area where we have a certain risk of wildfire. And it does this everywhere that we serve. Every single customer in Oregon, Washington, and in California. We're a pretty big company. We stretch across a large area. So that's from Wildfire Analyst, again, using our in-house computer model. It simulates those fires everywhere in Oregon using our in-house model. This is an 8-hour simulation from July 7th of 2024. Again, not an actual fire, just a sim. But it allows us to know what kind of safety actions we need to take place. The rest of the video is going to show you some of our tools. I think this part is just about to end. So the next thing I'm going to show you is pacificpowerweather.com. Again, plug in the website, go check it out. You can access it from your mobile phones or from your desktop or laptop or iPad or whatever you have at home, your tablet. You can see weather stations up there. You get weather information, humidity, temperature, et cetera, et cetera. It'll show you fancy graphs. If you have questions about how it works, come see me afterward. I can show you, give you a quick demo of how the website works. But it's the stuff that we're using every single day. And we've shared this with all of our partners, so our emergency manager partners, fire departments, other utilities. I know recently I shared it with the National Weather Service. Some of the service folks of the National Weather Service were unaware we had this. I said, please just use it, check it out. It's got some of our in-house computer model data. It's also got some other model data from the US American model, the European forecast model. It's got other data on there. So we don't just use our model, we use a lot of data. We process a lot of data on a daily basis in order to try our best to keep the system running as safe as possible. So that's what we're doing every single day. It's a community problem. We're all fighting the same battle. We're all in this together. This is something that has been happening to all of us. We saw what happened in California recently. We've seen what's happened in Hawaii, in Colorado, in there are recent fires in the Carolinas. We're seeing wildfire is a problem for our communities. So we take it very seriously. And if you have any questions, again, please reach out to me afterward. Happy to talk about how I can nerd out on this weather stuff, because I am a weather geek since like when I was a kid in the 1980s watching TV news. So, because back then we didn't have the internet, right? We didn't have all this fancy stuff. So, all right. With that said, I'm going to toss it over to Melissa. She's going to talk about how we're making the system safer doing long-term projects and other things of that nature in mitigating or lowering that risk. Thank you.
Thanks, Chester. He's very hard to follow because he is deep into the weather, and I know people really love the weather. Like, what is it going to be like tomorrow? What's that 5-day look like? So very happy to be here. I spent a lot of time actually right across the bridge in the park all afternoon doing meetings remotely, and it was a great day to be outside and doing meetings, so I really appreciate it. It's a beautiful park. Thank you, sir, for the Grass Valley boots recommendation. I'm going to look it up when I get back to the hotel tonight. Very much appreciate it. He told me of a place in Grass Valley that makes nice, fancy custom boots, and I was like, oh, yes, please. So I'm very happy for that. Happy to be back over here. When I was a kid, we spent a lot of time camping on the lower Deschutes. So spent a little time over here. We spent a lot of time camping, caught some rainbow trout, burned them over the campfire. not the greatest thing to do with your nice rainbow trout, but very happy to be back here. So as Chester said, I am here to talk about how we are building a more resilient system and what we're doing to make sure that our system is operating to prevent wildfires and what goes into that. And so really that's about making our system more resilient to hazards. And this can mean some of the things that you see up here on the screen, like putting in cover conductor or using aerial spacers or fire-resistant poles, or in some circumstances, undergrounding. And I'll talk a little bit more about what this means. So typically, if you are driving down the road and you're looking at the poles and the wires along the road, that's bare wire. And so if something hits it, like if a tree branch is blowing in the wind or something taps that line, it can hit it, it can cause a spark in some circumstances, and in some cases it could cause the power to go out. So what we'll do in areas of high fire risk is cover that with conductor, that bare wire with insulation. And there's some examples on the displays out here to the left as you leave. But in very simple terms, and I got a thumbs up when I used this example last night from the operations people, cover conductor, if you think of like wires on your appliances at your house, you don't just have a bare wire. It's covered with a layer of insulation. So if you touch it, you don't get hurt. That's what cover conductor does. So one, don't ever touch a wire. Assume it's live no matter what. But if something hits a wire with this cover conductor, like that branch hits it or a balloon hits it, the odds of it causing a spark or causing an outage go down. So that's what we do in those areas of high fire consequences, areas in purple on the map that Hallie showed. We're also looking at things like aerial spacers. And again, there's an example here. So if you think about out here, sometimes when the wind really blows good, the cables and the wires start to sway back and forth. And if they're moving fast enough and the wind's blowing hard enough, sometimes there may be a contact. And we don't want that to happen, because when wires contact, you can have a spark. So what happens with aerial spacers is we keep them separate with that little contraption there of spacers. So that keeps it so if the wind blows, they're not going to collide and start swaying back and forth together. They're going to, or collide with each other. They're just going to move slightly back and forth together. We're also looking at, in some circumstances, undergrounding, and that's where it makes sense to do. And that's really putting the cables and the wires underground, just literally undergrounding. We're also looking at things like putting in more fire-resistant poles. So a lot of poles you may see today are wood. That's really common. In areas where we've got some high fire risk, we'll put in things like fiberglass and steel, which are more resilient to fire. So let's take a look at where we are and where we're going. So as at the end of 2024, we had completed 175 miles of overhead cover conductor hardening in our plan, and that's across Oregon. This year, our objective is to complete another 175 miles by the end of the year. And as of the end of March, we completed about 67 miles of that. So we're on track to hit that 175 mile mark. We're also working on what we call our advanced system protection. And that looks like upgrades to and replacements to devices we call relays and reclosers and communicating fault current indicators. So I'm not an engineer, but I'm going to do my best to explain this. So think of these relays and reclosers and these communicating fault current indicators working in tandem. So the relays and reclosers are sitting on those lines going, there's a tap on the line, something tapped on the line. Is it still on the line? If it is, they're going to shut off the power in fractions of a second. So that's a good thing. But now the power is out. So these communicating fault current indicators are sending messages back to our operations center, to the people who operate our grid, going, hey, the power is out. Here's the location where the power is out. So then we can send out crews to go take a look and go, okay, this is what's going on. What do we need to do to resolve it so that we can get the power restored for you guys as quickly and as safely as possible? So I want to show you a little bit about where we're doing some of the system strengthening. So you can see in the middle here a map of Oregon, and then in the boxes there, where we're doing our grid hardening. We're doing a lot of work in Southern Oregon near Grants Pass and Cave Junction and Klamath Falls. But up here in Northern Oregon, we have a project where we're replacing circuit, doing hardening on a circuit between Hood River to just east of Mosier. So fairly close to you guys. And you can see here, and I love these zoom ins because you can see that a circuit is complex. It covers a lot of areas. So if I think of like the wires on the poles on my street, into the street, I go, okay, that's my line. Yep. And then a circuit will keep going and going and going and weave along a road. You can see the one up there on the right, between Hood River and Mosier. There's a straight line, but then it's going up and down canyons to also provide service. So when we are out hardening, that's a really complex project, and it'll take us, a year to plan, and then before we start going and doing the work in the field and actually putting in installing the cover conductor. Some of the things we do on a regular basis is vegetation management. And vegetation management can look like work on the ground, and also look like work in the air. And Heather does a lot of this work and works with our vegetation crews. And really in areas of high fire consequence, say that a few times quickly, we're doing that work more quickly and frequently, but we're also looking at all the vegetation we have around our poles and wires and making sure that we're keeping it trimmed back in our right-of-ways. Because again, we don't want a limb to hit a line, potentially cause a spark, to cause an ignition, or to cause an outage. We're also looking at vegetation that's around and underneath our lines and our poles to keep those clear as well, because we don't want, if something happens and there's a spark and it falls to the ground, that a fire is caused that way either. So we're also looking at if trees are diseased or at risk of hitting or falling on a line. So maybe not in our lines, but maybe you sometimes drive past or you look at, out at your property and you're like, oh, that tree doesn't look great. I really should take it out. Or you've got a limb and you're like, oh, that limb's gonna fall the next time there's a good stiff wind because it's dead and dying. Around our equipment, we're making sure to take care of our trees. So if those trees look sketchy, they're diseased, they're dead or dying, we want to take care of them because we don't want them falling on our equipment, causing an outage, potentially causing a spark or an ignition. We're also taking a look at the equipment we have out here. So we're on the lookout for anything around potential problems with our lines, our poles, and our substations. And in our fire high consequence areas, some of those areas in purple up near Hood River, we're doing that more frequently. And we're also making sure that we're fixing issues around that are high risk of energy release potential and safety issues first. And just to give you an idea of how big of a job that is, last year we inspected over 100,000 transmission and distribution pieces of equipment. That's a lot. And that's across all of Oregon. And then this year, we're also doing safety patrols across our whole service area. So right here in Moro, right here in Sherman County, we are doing what we call safety patrols, which is we're just driving by, we're looking at all our equipment, making sure that everything looks right. And if anything looks a little off, we're going to report it and make sure that it gets taken care of. So those are some of the things we do around our system resiliency. Now we're going to talk about how we operate our systems safely during fire season. And really what we think of is, as Chester may have said, fire season isn't a date, it's a state of being. So we can't say every year, April 1st is the start of fire season. We don't sit there and go magically, bing, that's the same day every year. It's really about the conditions that the meteorology team sees out there in the field, on the ground, what the fuels and the weather conditions are looking like. And so we really think about that as we do that, and really think about it's a state of being, it's a condition, and it's not a date. And as you guys may be aware, and as Chester said, last year was a record-breaking year for wildfires in the US. Not a record we want to break. Not a record, kind of makes me flinch a little bit. But last year, according to the National Interagency Fire Center, there were more than 61,000 fires that burned 8.8 million acres. And here in Oregon, there were more than 2,000 fires that burned nearly 2 million acres. So we had almost a quarter of those acres of fire last year in the US. I'm a proud Oregonian. I love being number one in things. I don't like being number one in this. It's not a great thing. And I'll say that, of those 2,000 fires in Oregon last year, none were caused by utilities. But in our service area, and Nora and her team will talk, Nora will talk about this, but the emergency management team monitored 165 fires that were in our service area. So we are paying attention to what is going on in Pacific Power service area. So we are monitoring the conditions every day. Chester and his team looking out 5 days to understand the conditions that could cause a spark so that we can keep our community safe through our operational practices. And this could include putting settings on circuits to be more sensitive. So when I think about, talked about those relays and reclosers, making those more sensitive so if there is a tap on the line from something, the power shuts off more quickly. And that's known as enhanced safety settings. We may de-energize if there's fire too close to our equipment, and that's an emergency de-energization. So if there's a fire that starts and is moving towards our equipment, we may turn off the power. Or if emergency management is out there trying to fight a fire and they call us and say, hey, could you turn off the power for the safety of our crews? We will do an emergency de-energization. Or as a last resort, we may do what's known as a public safety power shutoff when the weather forecast and the fuels conditions indicate there's going to be an extreme fire risk. And Nora's going to talk more about that. So let's watch a video to explain a little better how we might use de-energization to prevent wildfires.
At Pacific Power, we're committed to providing the safe, reliable service you count on every day. During conditions such as gusting winds and hot, dry weather, and in areas near trees and other types of vegetation that could ignite, we need to take certain steps to prevent wildfires and reduce their impacts. While these safety measures may interrupt your service, they can prevent catastrophic wildfire events. Let's look at 3 of the ways we help protect communities and prevent wildfires. The first is enhanced safety settings. During times when wildfire risk is elevated, we will adjust the sensitivity of some of our equipment. With these settings activated, our lines will de-energize within fractions of a second if a line is contacted by debris, wildlife, or strong winds, reducing the risk of a fire ignition. Because of this, there's an increased potential for power to be disrupted and remain off until field crews can visually inspect the lines before power can be safely restored. Next is the public safety power shutoff. Hotter, drier, and windier weather conditions can create heightened wildfire risk, and we may carry out a public safety power shutoff, or PSPS, shutting off power to specific targeted areas. A PSPS is done in partnership with local public safety partners. If a PSPS is likely to occur, we attempt to notify customers that power may be turned off and to keep affected communities informed throughout a de-energization. Once we've determined that the fire risk is passed, we will safely re-energize lines and restore service. Emergency de-energization is another wildfire prevention method that may result in a disruption of your power. When an active wildfire moves close enough to threaten burning into our lines or equipment, we will begin monitoring the fire closely to evaluate its potential spread and impact to our systems. If the fire is moving too close to our equipment, we will complete an emergency de-energization of our power lines. This process helps us prevent additional wildfires and protect first responders. Here at Pacific Power, we're dedicated to keeping our customers safe while delivering the power that our communities count on every day. During times of extreme weather events, when wildfire risk is at its highest, our wildfire prevention measures will help protect our customers and the communities we serve. To learn more, visit us at pacificpower.net/wildfire.
So you'll see that web link a few more times. That I hope you do check it out because there's lots of good information there. But we do understand that our operational practices like enhanced safety settings and emergency de-energizations do have an impact on customers. And so on the map there, you can see the location of our 2024 enhanced safety setting outages and emergency de-energizations. So you'll see the enhanced safety settings are in red and emergency de-energizations are in blue. And then over in the center map here is all of those events that happen within a 25-mile radius of Moro. And so you did have some outages from enhanced safety settings where we set those devices to be a little more sensitive in the conditions that said, we've got some risk here. We want to make things more sensitive. So if there's a tap on the line, we can shut off the power a little more quickly. So you can see a few of those in your area. So we know that those do have an impact on you because that's your power out. And it can be disruptive when your power is out. But safety for us is really the top priority there. And we want to help you understand how we're going to communicate with you about those sorts of outages and incidents. So if we are turning on enhanced safety settings for this season, and we really start at the beginning of a season and go, these are the places we want to start setting circuits on enhanced safety settings, we're going to send you a letter, either an email letter or something in the mail, depending on what your preference is to get communication from Pacific Power. And if there is an outage because of enhanced safety settings, we're going to send you an outage notification based off your preference for getting outage notifications, whether that be text, email, or phone. And if you aren't sure if you're signed up for outage alerts, the customer service team right out here can check your account tonight and make sure that you're signed up to get your communication on your outages based off your preference. So please, if you aren't sure, check. And if you're like, I haven't signed up, please go get signed up tonight. On emergency de-energizations, and remember, those are where fire may be getting too close to our equipment. If we have time, we will send you a notification that there's a pending de-energization, again, based off your preference of text, email, or phone. If the power is de-energized because of an emergency de-energization, we'll also notify you by those same outage communication channels. And then if there is a longer term event, we'll continue to communicate with you in a regular cadence about what's going on. We don't want to leave you hanging about what's going on with your power outage. We've also had some feedback from customers last year around communications on enhanced safety settings and emergency de-energizations. So this year, we know some of you may check our outage map out when there's an outage to go, hey, what's going on? If the outage is due to enhanced safety setting outage or an emergency de-energization outage, we're going to tell you on the map what the cause of that's the reason for that outage. We want to be really clear and transparent about what's going on and what we know. So we will put that right on our map so you can look and go, okay, okay, emergency de-energization, there's a fire in the area. Oh, enhanced safety settings, okay, they'll be out investigating to see what's going on. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nora to talk about public safety power shutoffs and also what you can do to prepare for wildfires.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope dinner was great. It smelled delicious, and that lemon cookie was my favorite. I'm always here for desserts. My name is Nora. I have been with Pacific Power for almost 3 years now. I came from a local and special district, formerly in the government world, not in the private sector, so it's new for me, and it's very exciting to be here because we are doing really amazing things. And I'm really proud to be part of the team. I'm going to talk a little bit more about resources that we have for you and how we communicate with you. But first, I'm going to cover the public safety power shutoff component. You heard Chester talk about how we learn about the risk and how we learn about what to expect. And then you heard Melissa about working towards ultimately being resilient to where we don't have to have any of these measures that you're experiencing today with power disruption. But until there, we have quite a few things in place that we've been developing over the years. And one of the most key factors that we have when it's no longer safe to really operate our system in dangerous conditions is considered the public safety power shutoff. So this is a planned outage. We will know about 5 days in advance from Chester's team that we are looking at a forecast and weather conditions that we can no longer safely have the power on, and we have to make plans to turn it off. And the conditions really are indicated by the vegetation, the weather, and the potential for impact on customers and communities. This is a timeline. It's a lot to look at. I'm not going to highlight all of it, but for your awareness, we typically know about 4 or 5 days out. 3 days out, we start working with our local public safety partners, emergency management, fire districts, and a couple things that we try to determine. How long will the power outage potentially be out? Do we need to stand up a community resource center? This is a place where you can go get information, get on Wi-Fi, get drinks, power your devices, and a lot of other resources that are operating that we will staff and have available to you in a community. If it's a short outage, or if there's maybe not a huge impact, it may be decided that we don't set one up, but we do plan that about 3 days in advance. And where should we locate that? We also work with our public safety partners to see, are there any critical facilities? And this would be a really great example if you have a senior center that serves as potentially a shelter or a hospital or a care facility, long-term care facility. Do they have backup generation? Do they need additional resources during the outage to support their patients, their customers, and the community? So we start working those issues 3 days out. As we get closer, we start notifying you, the customer, 2 days out. So expect to get a phone call, an email, a text, letting you know that we are forecasting us to have to de-energize at this date and time. And we'll continue a cadence of communication up until the time that we have to de-energize. Sometimes we do, the weather does improve. I know Chester's got great tools, but sometimes the forecast ends up being better than initially anticipated, and we can cancel that, so we will let you know. So this is really what to expect with the public safety power shutoff. It's very different than, say, an emergency de-energization, like with a wildfire that's getting close, or the ESS, the enhanced safety settings. Those happen very quickly and very immediately, where a public safety power shutoff we can forecast. So a couple things we've put in place to assist with this. We have new capabilities we're developing this year. You're familiar with the emergency management team. Amber is your local emergency manager here. She's fantastic. So we're tasked with a lot of the annual outreach, the ongoing meetings, the local emergency planning committees, or a variety of different engagement that we work with the local communities. We make plans, we write plans, we train, we exercise, we do a lot of things when we're not having an emergency. But when we have an emergency, our team coordinates the response for more effective and more efficient response. We, additionally to the emergency managers, have 2 new capabilities this year. I just want to quickly touch on the Wildfire Intelligence Center. We're setting up a 24/7 group of individuals that will be monitoring our 6-state territory for a variety of different risks, primarily focused with wildfire. That's where we're starting. As Melissa mentioned, we had quite a few, almost 2 million acres. In Oregon, we don't want to be the #1 in the country, but unfortunately, we have those conditions last year specifically. So we're hiring individuals that have a lot of experience in 911 or wildland fire dispatching, law enforcement, and a variety of different areas, and they will be on 24/7 to monitor and let us know what conditions occur. We also have a brand new deployable team, the fire and emergency response managers, and Mike is in the back with Amber here. He is located in the area, and he's your local contact. Now, Mike would deploy for a long duration fire and work with the fire departments or the incident management team, depending on how big the fire gets, and be that agency liaison directly with us. So he understands, how we can access areas. He will work with making sure if there's a priority for the fire department to say, we need this area restored first, we've went ahead and mitigated it. Mike will coordinate and make sure crews get there and restore the areas, do the damage assessment, repair anything, and then restore quickly. So he's there for that on-site coordination to help speed it up. And that's a new capability that we're developing. We don't have it everywhere yet, but you do have somebody local here, which is really great. So now I want to talk about what you can do. And this is more of a general preparedness kind of a aspect to the presentation. And I want to talk a little bit about emergency plans. Raise your hand if you have an emergency plan for yourself and your family? Awesome, thank you, I appreciate that. So it does take time to create an emergency plan. Out here, we have listed a couple of things to consider. These are just a few things. There's a lot more considerations to take place. We do have our own website that gives you a lot of information and links, but I'm not going to go into detail. There's a lot of free templates available online, and we also have some collateral, some material on the other side of the room here that can help you do that. It does take time, it does take effort, but it can be done for free. It doesn't have to be an expensive resource, and it just brings a great peace of mind because you know what to do. If you have young kids in school, or if you have vulnerable loved ones, family members or neighbors that you care about that may not be able to manage if something does happen, an emergency occurs, it's really important to know who they can contact. What if you can't meet at home? What if there's a flood or an earthquake or something what's your emergency meeting place with your family members? It's really a great peace of mind for them to really understand what the plan is if something happens. The other thing that's really important is an emergency kit. There's two kinds. There's the kind that you take a backpack and go. People call it a bug out kit or a go kit. That can last you a few days worth. And then there's the one at home if you can shelter at home. How many of you have one of those two kits? Oh, a lot more. That's great. Okay, awesome. Again, takes some time to put together, and it takes some thought to put together, but it doesn't have to be done all at once. You can, there's some great programs out there. I know in Oregon, on the Oregon Emergency Management website, there's a program. You can do one thing each month for 12 months. And then that way it's a lot easier to piecemeal and put it together. Again, really focus on what you're going to need to survive without any resources, not power, not just if it's a power outage, but what if it's an earthquake and you lose water, power, you lose any way of communicating, you really just kind of need to figure out individually for yourself and the people that you care about, that you're responsible for, what you need. And we encourage 2 to 3 weeks. We are in a Cascadia subduction zone area here. We're still close enough to that there would be impacts, and it's, again, a peace of mind, and it's a great way to make sure that you're resilient. I use my kit all the time. When my kids were little, in the back of my car, my go kit was I had to constantly replenish it, whether it's, granola bars, water, Band-Aids, whatever it is. We were always using it. So I highly encourage you to prepare yourselves as well. And then finally, a lot of beautiful landscape out here. The drive was gorgeous. Defensible space. Has anybody practiced this at home? Perfect, thank you. Okay, great. We saw in the conflagration that was the Paradise Fire down in California that it can go through urban areas. It was very dense, and you think not that much vegetation. Any vegetation directly up against your home can create a bigger risk for your home. So it has been proven that defensible space does assist with protecting your home during a wildfire. There's quite a few things to consider. We have, again, handouts. I'm not going to go into detail on the slides here as we get late into our presentation, but we highly encourage you to consider that. You can do that as a renter. You can do that as a homeowner. And it really will help in the event that there is a fire in the area. One of the things that I do want to share is we have created a one-stop shop, a one-stop webpage for assisting our customers with additional vulnerabilities. I'd like to share the website here at pacificpower.net/accessibility. We also have the handouts here. There's a couple things that we can offer for you during a time of need or during a time of power outages. A couple of really important things to note. If you know somebody that has medical conditions and they require electricity to power devices, life support devices, we do have a program. It's a medical certificate program. They can qualify. It does take a doctor to sign it, but they can qualify up to $4,000 rebate on backup generation for their equipment. So that way they can be more resilient during a power outage. So I want to make sure if you know somebody that has that need, and if they're not aware of that, make sure that they're aware of it, because it's very valuable and it's very worthwhile, and it could save a life if they're out of power. A couple of other things that we offer that are great is if there is a PSPS event here, there hasn't been one to date in the area, but our last one was in September of 2022, and it was in other parts of Oregon. But if there is one here, if you are part of this program, you will get notification and you'll get called to make sure that you understand of the impact. And if you need resources, we can connect you with resources to make sure you need that. So it's a great way to, again, really help you out during a potential long duration power outage to help support you. We offer language support on our customer service, and that's speaking with an individual. That's not like a robocall that you get the recording. That really helps. So if you know somebody that has low English proficiency that may not speak English very well, please let them know they can still call us and get a human, and we can still talk to them and give them information. And then we also have bill payment and financial assistance available. So one website to support all of those services that we offer our customers. And finally, this is my last slide. I just want to leave you with a couple of requests. If you haven't done so, please make sure you verify your contact information, because a lot of what we talked about today, whether it's an enhanced safety setting outage, whether it's a public safety power shutoff, we reach you based on the information that you provide us and your preference. So I don't know about you, but one of the last things I think about is, oh, I forgot to update, when I get a new phone, or I changed my work phone or something like that. I forgot to update my electricity account. I mean, that's not something we normally think of, but while we're here, and hopefully we have customer service here that can check this. They're right outside the door. Please take a moment to just verify it. It just takes a few minutes, and that way you know that we know how to contact you. Update those preferences, and then please sign up for our alerts. These are alerts. There's a QR code, or there's a website here. You can take it with your phone and sign up, and then we'll be able to notify you when there's anything happening in your area that you may be impacted from. And with that, I'm going to hand it back off to Hallie to close us out.
All right, thank you so much, Nora. If you would like to see the actual wildfire mitigation plan that we put together for the state of Oregon or any of our states, you can visit our website, pacificcorp.com/safety, or the giant QR code here on the screen. With that, that's kind of the end of our prepared remarks for the presentation tonight. And so we're going to open it up for some question and answer.